So one of the past podcast episodes that I did was something called 10 Words to Transform Tough Conversations. And what that was talking about is how when you're having a difficult conversation with somebody else, one of those tough conversations that can sometimes lead to conflict, that you can create a little bit of distance between yourself and the thing that you want to say, the thing that you want to share, by saying something along the lines of, so I noticed the story that I'm telling myself. And so if you say that to another person, it drops how tightly you're married to that idea. You're not saying to the person, this is what I think. You're saying to the other person, I notice that I'm telling myself this story. And so when you do that, you create a bit of distance. And in the other person's eyes, they realise then that you're not coming at them with an opinion or with a thought or something that's very set in stone, but you're almost kind of noticing your own thought pattern. And so it's much more likely that if you share something difficult that you're feeling about a situation in that way, so I notice I'm telling myself a story that ... then it makes it a lot easier for the other person to hear, simply because it adds that distance. And in this episode, I want to show you a similar technique in which you can create that distance for yourself, because just like it was helpful when you're having a difficult conversation to just, in the other person's eyes, prize yourself away from the thought, from the story. So the other person realises that you're not really tightly attached to it so much. You're just kind of noticing that you're having it, and it creates that distance. That distance can often be helpful for us as well, because it can be very tempting sometimes to have a thought and be kidded into thinking that that thought is the truth, or that that thought should be obeyed, or that that thought has some wisdom, when really it's just a thought. And so in a very similar way, instead of saying, well, I think this, or I'm thinking that, we can use a very similar formula to that one that I've just said in terms of difficult conversations, in order to create some distance from our own thoughts. And so when we do that, we can stand apart from it and go, oh yeah, that's the thought I'm having. And we're not so closely identified with it. We don't necessarily think it's us anymore. We create that separation. And in that separation, we can get a bit of power over the thought. Well, that thing over there that I'm looking at, does it make sense? Do I need to obey it? Is it wise? We can ask all of those questions from a distance much more powerfully. So here's the phrase. And it's very similar to the one from that other episode with difficult conversations that I've just mentioned. The phrase basically is, I notice that I'm having the thought that. That's the phrase. I notice that I'm having the thought that. And just like those difficult conversations where you say, I notice I'm telling myself the story that, I notice that I'm having the thought that such and such, separates you from the thought, because actually you are separate from the thought. And it gives you a little bit of power. In fact, it gives you quite a lot of power to just examine the thought that you notice yourself that you're having. I notice that I'm having the thought that I'm not doing very well today. I notice that I'm having the thought that other people might not like me. Now that's much different and much looser, isn't it, than saying, nobody likes me. Because then we treat that as fact. And if we treat it as fact, we'll react to it as fact. And that will become our reality. Whereas if we just start with that phrase, so I notice I'm having a thought that people don't like me. The whole energy in that, even saying it in this moment now, feels so much lighter and so much more disattached. And so, seeing as it was really useful to try that within difficult conversations, maybe this is an experiment you'd like to try. When you realise that you're stating a thought as if it's complete fact. Replace that by saying, I notice that I'm having the thought that, and then you can describe the thought and just see what difference it makes. And so if you like this idea, feel free to spread it around so other people can get the benefits as well. You can subscribe to this podcast for free wherever you get them. You can go to sliceoftherapy.com for the videos, and you can work with me directly. I'm Alun Parry at Liverpool Psychotherapy Practice, which is at liverpoolpsychotherapy.co.uk. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you tomorrow.